Because when we think of marine science, and the actual definition of marine science is just the study of the ocean. But just because you want to pursue a career in marine science doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a marine biology degree or have a marine science degree. You can pursue almost anything you want as long as you take classes like science classes and biology classes to supplement it. Because in today's world especially, there's so many different jobs and careers and meanings that fall under marine science. So I wanted to read you this little blurb really quick. So this is on one of our government agencies' website called NOAA, which is an agency that deals with the ocean and atmospheric science. And even they say, although many people today are familiar with the term marine biologist, most do not realize that, in reality, the job title of marine biology actually rarely exists. The term is used for many disciplines and jobs in the marine sciences, which deal with the study of marine life, not just for those which deal with the physical properties of the sea, though many biologists study both. So a marine biologist might be a biological technician, an ichthyologist, a fishery biologist, a marine mammologist, a microbiologist, a systems analyst, or a mathematician. Even economists and sociologists who deal with living marine resource issues are found within the so-called field of marine biology. In addition, other marine scientists concern themselves exclusively with the physical and chemical aspects of the sea, such as physicists, hydrologists, and physical oceanographers. So even in that just little paragraph right there, I named about 10 different things you could possibly be within the marine science field. Going along with that, there are tons of different marine science careers and job choices, but also, even if you do have the same job, there's no right or wrong way to get to that particular job. For example, me and Miss Dora are actually a really good way to describe this. We do have very similar jobs. We both work for the same organization and we're both about the same age, but the way we got to our two jobs have been completely different. So Miss Dora, she actually grew up in the Florida Keys, so right here. She's been on the ocean her entire life. Her dad and mom have both worked in the marine conservation or marine science fields. And at school, she actually studied environmental science and oceanography and knew from a very, very young age that she wanted to work with education and educating others about the ocean. Me, on the other hand, I had a completely different background. I am from Michigan, where there is no ocean in sight. We have some of the Great Lakes, but I didn't grow up anywhere near those. When I went to school, I studied wildlife conservation, but I also studied primatology, which is the study of primates or some types of monkeys. And I finally studied abroad when I was in school. I went to the Caribbean and learned how to scuba dive and learned how to snorkel. And that's really where my interest for the ocean took place. So Miss Dora knew at 5 years old that she was going to be working in the ocean, where it took me till about 22 years old to realize I wanted to do a career in marine science. So after that, it didn't stop me that I didn't necessarily have a degree in marine science or a degree in oceanography. I just took that fact that I finally knew what I wanted to do, and I worked really hard to make sure that I started to learn about more of the sciences and to learn more about the ocean. And finally, I actually ended up at Reef Relief because I took an internship with Reef Relief in order to learn more about this ecosystem, and that's where I got today. So like I said, totally different paths that we took to get to our careers, but we both ended up in a very similar field. So there's no right or wrong way to have a marine science job. What should you not study in school if you want to be a marine scientist? Is it law, environmental science, mathematics, or journalism? So what should you not study in school if you want to be a marine scientist? All right, guys, good job. So this one looks pretty split, which is a good thing because this is actually a complete trick question. The answer to this is that none of those answers are right, because those are all totally fine to study in school if you want to become a marine scientist. You can study law and become a marine scientist. You can study journalism, becoming a marine scientist, environmental science, and mathematics. Those are all really important things that people do need to marine science community. So that question was completely a trick. Those are all amazing majors and really awesome things to study if you do want to become a marine scientist. So that leads me to the next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, is that when we do have all these different careers in marine biology, there's tons of different pathways to get there and different places that you can work for. So a few of them I want to talk about is you can work for the government in these careers. You can also work for businesses. You can work for nonprofit organizations, or you can even work independently, which just means you're an entrepreneur and you can work for yourself. So when we're talking about government agencies, we are talking about agencies that are run by the government, or that they're in the government branch. So that's going to be like your Fish and Wildlife Service, your National Park Service. Then you have businesses. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of 4Ocean before, but they are a business that picks up trash all around the world and actually recycles their trash and makes it into bracelets for people to buy. So that's a type of business, which means that they are generating or creating money, but it's still in the marine science or the environmental science fields. Another business that we have down here is the Key West Aquarium. This is such a cool business because it teaches people all about find underwater, but it's way easier to access, so it's meant for all sorts of people. And this is also a business because they do generate money by having people come to their facility. And then you also have like entrepreneurship, or doing something from yourself. So being an entrepreneur just means creating your very own business. It means that you can run your own business. And this is another really cool way to pursue a marine science career. An example of this is maybe in the arts, like if you're a wildlife photographer, or if you paint things that are in the ocean. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Wyland before, but he's a really famous artist that paints tons of different marine science, sea creature pieces all over Key West. He has actually another, I'm from Michigan, so he has another famous whale piece on one of the buildings in Detroit, Michigan. And these are really cool because you might just think he's just painting whales and marine animals, but what he's doing is giving people a chance to look at what is in the ocean that you might not necessarily see, and spreading awareness of all these animals and our ocean through art. So that's someone that created their own business in the hopes to help spread marine conservation. Then finally, after business, we do also have nonprofit organizations. Now, these guys are, it's exactly what's in their name. They're not for profit, so they're not making tons of money all the time. Usually a little bit smaller. And some examples of these guys in the Florida Keys include the Coral Restoration Foundation, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They restore corals. Reef Relief, so where me and Miss Dora work, Reef Relief is also a nonprofit organization. Then you have bigger ones like the Ocean Conservancy, or if you guys have ever heard of WWF, their logo is that panda bear. They're a nonprofit organization. And then we also have a different kind of nonprofit, like the Sierra Club and the Clean Water Action Foundation. And these guys are also nonprofits, but there is a little bit of a difference between those two, and then like Reef Relief and the Coral Restoration Foundation and all of those guys. So this is a little bit confusing and it's not crazy important, but I do want to mention it. So there's a nonprofit called a 501c3. Now the C3s, like Reef Relief and the Coral Restoration Foundation, we are not allowed to express our political views or tell people for a specific candidate or for a specific law, even if it does have to do with the environment. Under those 501c3 guidelines, we're not allowed to say our political opinion on anything. So even like I said, if it has to do with the environment, we can't really tell people to vote one way or the other. If we did do that, we wouldn't be able to get money or funding to support all of our programs. There's a different kind of nonprofit, like I was saying. These ones are called 501c4s. So 3 was that first one. C4 are things like the Sierra Club, like Clean Water Action, and these C4s are allowed to tell you how to vote. And that's actually one of the main reasons that they exist, and one of their main programs is to inform people on how to make an educated vote on an environmental issue. So let's say that there's oil drilling going on in a certain country. They can say, hey, oil drilling's really, really bad for our environment for these 3 reasons, so we think you should vote no on this law to make oil drilling legal. And so that's something that a 501c4 organization can do. So again, there is government agencies, there's businesses, including entrepreneurship or creating your own business, and then there's also nonprofit organizations that fall into the 2 categories, 501c3 like Reef Relief and 501c4 like the Sierra Club. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys and can kind of separate a few of those terms. All right, so let's go on to our next subject. Really quickly, I also just wanted to go over what we were just talking about, is that you can really major in anything you want in school. So if you major in math, or if you are really interested in math, that can help you run statistics on ecological studies and ecological data. Law, there's tons of different jobs in the environmental field that have to do with law, like creating environmental laws, being a law enforcement. So like people that are on the water, ensure people are fishing correctly and following fishing regulations. They have to do with our law and our local government down here. You can also go into journalism and writing. So there's environmental journalism. Maybe one of your jobs will be to be a scientific writer one day and help write peer-reviewed articles. And also writing for publications and magazines. For maybe you have a job where you advertise a lot and you need to get the word out about environmental issue to a bunch of communities. So that all has to do with writing. Biology, obviously, if you want to study the study of life, this is a great topic to be able to study. You can learn all about how animals live. A lot of animals live in the water, so that's another good one you could study. Environmental science, you just learn about all the aspects of what's causing our natural world to suffer, what's going on with all these environmental impacts humans have on it, and then also how we can fight for a healthier planet. And then finally, you can also study art. Just saying, all people who paint and who express wildlife through photography and through other art forms, that's also equally as important. Now, those are all totally different topics, and yes, you should supplement or add on to your subject of interest with, like, oceanography or different science classes, or ecology or biology or some of those things. But you can still specialize in something that is completely not related to science, and hopefully after a long time you'll realize that it actually is quite related. Okay, guys, so now I want to talk to you a little bit more about, once you do enter this career field, what exactly career choices you can take. Before I get into this, I do want to mention that on our blog we have a booklet that's it's like the last link that you can click on the blog, of over 30 different people that are in either the Florida Keys or have lived here or have studied marine science, that have completely different jobs and completely different job categories. These people were nice enough to answer 9 interview questions to help you guys see and learn a little bit more about their career choice, their career path, how they got there, what they like about their job, what they don't like about it. And so definitely, I highly recommend reading that. It's super inspiring just to see how many people are in this field. And also, if you find someone in that booklet in our blog that you want to learn more about, all of the people we contacted would be absolutely totally happy for us to give you their information. So if you want their email or anything of that sort to answer more questions about what they do on a day-to-day job, I'd be happy to give you their information. So definitely highly recommend, if you take anything away from this lesson, if you are interested in pursuing a career in marine science, definitely check that out and use that resource to your advantage. That's something I wish I had when I was in school, because I had no idea that there was that many jobs out there. All right, so we are going to talk, like I said, about a few different career fields. So the first one is research. The second is education and outreach. Third is the government. Fourth is restoration. Fifth is rescue, rehabilitation, and relief, or marine mammal studies. And the last one is going to be recreation. So those 5 are kind of the ones I'm going to touch on today. Even after this lesson, guys, there's still so many more careers that I just am not going to have time to touch on. But these are the 5 that I see the most that are the most common. So I definitely wanted to talk to you guys about this. So the first one in careers is having a career in research. So as you guys know, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but only 5% of the ocean has been discovered, which means 95% of it has not. And so there is so much more we need to know about it. There's just so many different benefits that we can have from knowing more about the ocean. And when you do go into research, this is one of those careers where you do need a little bit of a higher up degree. A lot of people have their master's degree and even their PhDs. A lot of times universities, so if you're trying to get your PhD or get your master's, they will actually fund a lot of your research or give you money for your research to help with travel expenses, for the equipment you may need. So it is important, and usually these guys do have higher up degrees. But the cool thing about this is that the options of what you can study are essentially limitless. There's 2 main types of people that deal with research. There is field research. All that means is that you're in a particular outdoor environment and you observe the natural behaviors, patterns, or movements of an organism you are studying. For example, some people research whale migrations. Some people do field research on shark behavior. Some people do field research on species diversity or dolphin communication. So when you're out in the field, you're interacting with the environment around you. Lab research is a little bit different. This is when you are in a lab, so in a scientific laboratory, and studying specimens with microscopes, computers, and other specialized equipment. And lab work usually gives scientists insight on what is happening to organisms at like a microscopic level. So an internal level or a really, really small level, something that you wouldn't necessarily be able to see with the naked eye like you would be able to in the field. And some examples of this is like studying microplastics in fish organs or studying genetic patterns of a specific invertebrate species. So as you can see, like between lab and field research, there's just a ton of different things you can do. So I have another question for you guys. What is an example of field research? And you might not be able to see this whole thing, but it says looking at coral polyps reacting to an ocean acidification experiment. So like looking at coral polyps underneath a microscope and seeing how they react to ocean acidification. Or counting brain coral polyps at the reef to measure species abundance. So I'll read those ones again. Counting brain coral polyps at the reef to measure species abundance. That just means how many of a particular species there are. Or looking at coral polyps reacting to ocean acidification. So which one of these would be field research? Okay, good job, guys. So most of you got that correct. It was brain corals at the reef to measure species abundance. So in the field, you're actually at the reef, looking around you, interacting with the organisms around you, and counting to see how many of a particular type of coral are at that reef. So that is an example of field research. So really good job. All right, awesome. So let's go to our next topic, which is education. So education is one of my favorites, and I'm a little bit biased because that's what I do every single day is talk to our community members, students like you guys, all about why our oceans are so important, what is in our oceans, what's so cool to discover about them, and also what we can do as humans to make sure that our oceans stay healthy for a really long time to come. And so in the education and outreach field, you usually do need some sort of marine biology background. Your degree can be anything from high school all the way up to your PhD. The education realm and career is very, very flexible. And so there's tons of different people with tons of different background experiences. But like I said, it's all about teaching communities, students, tourists, visitors, people about our environment. In the Florida Keys, there's a few different organizations that do have education programs, one being Reef Relief, which is where me and Dora work. We actually teach over 8,000 students every single year about our coral reef ecosystems. We have a snorkel camp during the summer where we take 225 kids out to see all the beautiful coral reefs around us. And we also have an environmental center and do tons of different things with our adult community members as well. Moat Marine Laboratory, they are up in Summerlin Key and Sarasota. They also have an education program. They do a lot of research in coral restoration, but they also do try and educate a lot of college students and community members about our corals. And then we also have ecotourism. So people who work for a boat or a charter company that try and be a little bit more environmentally friendly, they might take tourists on snorkeling trips and kayak trips and teach them all about the beautiful ocean we have. And so it just is a really good way to spread awareness. And then also under education and outreach, we have places like aquariums. Aquariums do have captive or animals that are in captivity, but it is for a good reason. A lot of times it is for just purely educating our public and educating our community members on what why these animals are so important and just different things about them. So that is a little bit more about what you can do in the education and outreach field. Another pretty obvious education is that you can become a teacher. If you want to become a science teacher, a marine science teacher, that's another thing you can do in that education field. All right, guys, the next one is working for the government. Again, there are tons of different things you can do when working for the government, including becoming a policy maker, which just means creating laws. You guys remember that Miss Dora talked about marine protected areas. So a lot of times policymakers will determine where these protected areas are going to be, how big they're going to be, what is coming in and out of them. So that is a really important job that policymaker. A lot of times they also have to make laws or policies on different fishing regulations. So where you can fish, how much you can fish. Also, they help with like natural disaster preparedness. So a lot of times as our environment is changing, we're getting bigger hurricanes and bigger natural disasters. And so they can make policies and secure funding and give funding out to communities that might be needing help when it comes to natural disasters. So those are just a few things that different policy makers can do. Also, you can be code enforcement. So down here, Dora, I think she was talking about either on Monday or Wednesday that we have FWC. They are law enforcers that make sure that our community is following environmental rules, such as fishing regulations, boating regulations, and it just makes sure that we're keeping ourselves on the water safe, but it's also keeping our wildlife safe as well. And finally, we also have something called a lobbyist. So have you guys heard the word lobbyist before, and do you know what that means? I'm going to post a poll. So let's see here. What is an environmental lobbyist? Is it a person who makes laws? Is it a person who breaks the law? Or is it a person who tries to influence lawmakers? Hey guys, a lot of you got that too. So it's a person who tries to influence lawmakers. So when we were talking way back at the beginning of this lesson about there's two nonprofits, there's the 501c3 and the 501c4. A lot of people who work for those 501c4, so the people who can talk about laws, talk about policies, talk about voting, a lot of those people can be lobbyists, and they try and help government officials and lawmakers make really good decisions for our environment. So they might say, hey, we need to make a better fishing law that has to do with sharks. There's way too many sharks that are getting killed from fishing. It's really unsustainable. It's really bad for our ocean because it is going to mess up the food chain. These are all the things of why me as an environmental lobbyist thinks that shark fishing should be banned, and I want you guys to make a law about it, or I want you guys to vote yes to no shark fishing. So they're people, they're not making laws, but they're influencing lawmakers to make really good environmental decisions. So those are all different jobs that you can have in like a government field. All right, guys, the next one is the restoration field. So this just means growing and planting and restoring corals, mangroves, seagrass beds, and any coastal or deep sea ecosystem that might need to be worked on. So down here we have the Coral Restoration Foundation. They restore corals. We have Moat Marine. They also do a lot of coral restoration work. And then we have another nonprofit called Mang. It's M-A-N-G, and they're actually a clothing company, which is kind of weird that I'm putting them in the restoration category. But it's two guys that were entrepreneurs, so they also have a business that decided to make clothing that was very like ocean conservation and mangrove oriented. And every single time that they sell a t-shirt or a UV shirt or a product, they plant a mangrove tree. So that's just another really creative, cool way to be in a marine science career when you didn't necessarily think that those two things would go together, clothing and conservation. And they made it so that their clothing company and restores a really important ecosystem down here. If this is a type of field that you would be interested in, it's actually pretty cool because there's a lot of different volunteer opportunities that you can take in order to just see if this is something you would like. If you're scuba dive certified, or even sometimes if you just are a really good, strong swimmer or snorkeler, a lot of times you can actually go to these organizations or organizations even in your coastal community where you can help restore corals, grow corals, at least learn how that they are grown, restoring seagrass beds, restoring mangroves, and helping make a difference that way. Excuse me. And I should say that for all of these opportunities, volunteering and getting as much experience before your career as possible is always a really good idea. All right, now we're going to move on to rescue, rehabilitation, and release. This is all what Miss Dora talked about on Wednesday, so I'm not going to get too much into it. This mostly has to do with working with marine mammals, studying their behavior, and also being on the lookout for any endangered animals or marine mammals that might be entangled in something, might have one of those diseases Miss Dora talked about, might be stranded. So the marine mammal behavior specialist or the rescue team, those are the people that are qualified and that have gone to school in order to rescue these animals, rehabilitate them, learn about their behavior, and then also bring them back to the wild. It's important to learn about these marine mammal behaviors because since they are mammals, they are somewhat closely related to humans. And a lot of times it's really cool just to see how smart they are, what their brain function is doing, and how they also behave with other animals around them. So it's a really, really cool job. Another thing that you can actually do since they are so smart is, for example, you can train dolphins to work for the Navy. This is something that I think the biggest program is in San Diego, where dolphins are trained to detect underwater mines or enemy swimmers and help the Navy with actually like detecting different things, and they can train them to do so. So it is a really, really cool job. All right, and then finally, this is probably the biggest category, but also another extremely important one, which has to do with recreation. So there's a lot of jobs that fall under these categories, including scuba instructors, boat captains. This is where that wildlife photography section would be in. All of these guys are mostly entrepreneurs or they work for themselves. And also a lot of these guys don't necessarily take the traditional career path to get to where they are. They're under the word recreation because they are taking an interest or a hobby or something really cool to do and transforming it into a way to show people how amazing our environment is and to show people and teach people about how important it is to connect to it and to learn about it. So for example, if you're a boat captain on an ecotourism company's boat, yeah, you are driving the boat, making sure the vessel is prepared, making sure that your guests are safe, but you're also taking people out and showing them how amazing our environment is. So this is a really good way to become a boat captain, be on the water all the time, but also still educating and spreading awareness. Another really cool example that I did want to touch on is something that Miss Dora's dad actually does. He is a fish collector. He collects tropical fish. He collects invertebrates like different types of crustaceans. And something that he does with it is he does sell them to people to put in their aquariums, but he also gives them to scientists to do research on these different specimens. So for example, I'm pretty sure, and Ms. Dora will correct me if I'm wrong, but he collects a lot of invertebrates, specifically to go to labs where they are doing cancer research. So I know I said that over 95% of the ocean has not been discovered yet. This is one of the main reasons it is so important that we do discover the ocean and that we do make sure that it's a long time, because not only in corals but in tons of different marine animals and different marine plants, there are answers and cures and different things in the ocean that are helping us cure sicknesses like cancer, Alzheimer's, and this is one of the examples of that. So her dad actually collects these invertebrates, ships them off to a lab somewhere, and they do tons of research on these invertebrates in order to find different cures for different sicknesses, which is a really cool and unique job, and it's super important. So I am not going to do this one with you. The answers are online, but you're going to have this sheet right here. I want you guys, once you are done, to cut all of these squares out. They all have different job descriptions on it. And then on the second page, you have the names of all the job titles. So you're going to cut these out and match them together on which job title you think matches the job description. I'll do one of them with you just to give you an example. So let's do the first one together. I work for a government agency and make sure everyone on the water is following the law. I usually am driving a boat and check up on recreational boaters to make sure they have proper permits, are catching legal size fish, and are practicing proper boating responsibilities. My job is important to ensure everyone on the water is safe and our environment is protected. So you guys can see he works or she works for a government agency. They're on a boat all the time, and they're always making sure that people are following the law. So this one is going to be your federal wildlife officer. So this is someone who would work for the government, someone who would work for FWC or a code enforcement agency. So those ones would be matched together. So that's just a little example of how you do this final worksheet right here. And again, the answers are online. All right, guys, so one more poll question for you. Why is, and this falls in that recreation category, why is wildlife photography why is it important? So why is wildlife photography and environmental art important? So the questions are, it gets a little loud when that happens. So is it to spread awareness and curiosity? Is it a low impact on the environment? Or is it show people a place they might not necessarily get to travel to on their own? So does it show people a place they won't be able to travel to? Is it low impact on the environment? Or does it spread awareness and curiosity? You got that one right. It is all of the above. So you might think that photography or art has nothing to do with helping the environment, but it 1000% absolutely does. First off, it's usually only one or two people, so it's a very low impact on the environment. It's not stressful for animals to have photographers out there, so that's really awesome. It shows people a place that they're not going to ever be able to experience at some point. So it's just a really cool way to connect people to this environment, and also it spreads awareness and curiosity. Maybe you take a beautiful picture of a whale shark. You can now send that to thousands of different people on the internet or through your business, and it can show people an endangered species that they might not even have known was endangered in the first place. So it is a really cool, and just because, like I said, it is an art, it also has to do with marine science and that marine science career track. All right, so just to wrap up, guys, this is the last thing I have for you today. Hopefully this helped you understand a little bit more about what's out there in this field. Hopefully it inspired you to research different career opportunities in this field. And also, like I said, I am going to mention it again, to definitely 100% look at that booklet in the blog page to see what other people are doing. Another thing with that booklet that we do have, I am going to keep updating it throughout the week. We have tons of other scientists and people in this field that are going to also be answering the same questions. And like I said, this is an amazing opportunity, especially if you are in middle school, high school, or college, to reach out to these people, get connected, and maybe talk to them about how they got to their career and what they like, what they dislike about it, and different things of that sort. Definitely look at it and reach out. But yeah, to wrap up, like I said, although there's tons of different degrees you can pick from and subjects you can pick from, a lot of these jobs do require some sort of higher degree, unfortunately. So your bachelor's degree or your undergraduate degree, a lot of times they require you to have your master's degree or even your PhD. Like I said, especially in that research field, you do need a higher up degree. Another, it's not all playing in the ocean. It's not all just swimming with marine mammals all the time or marine animals. Sometimes it can be a really sad job choice. There's a lot of different environmental problems that are happening in our ocean. There's a lot of endangered species. A lot of animals are suffering from climate change and pollution. And so sometimes this job can be really, really sad. A lot of times the job requires you to have extremely long work hours or just unconventional work hours. Another thing is that sometimes it's tedious office work and lab work. You have to write scientific papers and budget and account, grant writing, publishing articles. So again, it's not all outdoor activities all the time. Sometimes it's really long hours and doing things that you might not necessarily want to do. Another thing is that, especially if you're working in that nonprofit or research-based job, it can be really hard to get funding or to make a salary or to get paid for what you're doing. You're constantly having to apply for grants and for different places for you to get money in order to carry out your mission. So sometimes that can be grueling, really hard. And so that's another thing to take into consideration, is that this type of passion and this career path doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to make a ton of money or have a really high salary. The bottom line is that you have to be super, super passionate about it, extremely passionate about your environment, extremely passionate about the ocean and making positive change. And as long as you have that mindset and that attitude, and always want to work hard, you will do absolutely great in this field.